Hello everyone and welcome back to Abundantly Minimal. My name is Sarah, and in today's video I thought I would walk through our new home construction process, basically a bird's eye view of everything that happened now that we've been living in this home full-time for 6 months. So today I will include timestamps below, but I'll be talking about our timeline of this project. I'll be talking about the benefits and drawbacks of new home construction and if it is maybe a good fit for you or if you're just interested. I'll also talk about our favorite things that we love about our home, as well as some regrets that we have. And lastly, I'll finish with some tips in case you are interested in going through this process and just to make sure that you are able to, make the most informed choice possible. So let's jump in first with the timeline. Now, I will start by saying this was not at all anywhere on our radar that's something we were going to actually do. So it was quite a surprise when it ended up working out. This was June of 2023. We had just decided, we're going to sell our condo. It's like a good seller market. We're going to temporarily do an apartment. We submitted an application to our favorite apartment complex in the morning and got lunch. And then we had set up a meeting with this new home construction group. We went with Pulte Construction, but I know there's a lot of different companies. And we thought, let's just see. There's nothing to lose. It's just a meeting. We'll see what happens. Turns out we actually ended up loving it so much. We did spend a lot of time after really analyzing things and talking through all the different layers of it, but did decide to go through the process and submit an application. Now, with this particular subdivision that was going up, it was very competitive. So we submitted in June, and we were told basically on average they were getting about 15 to 20 home applications each month, and they were selecting about 4 or 5 homes each month to be built. So we had a basically 20 to 25% chance. It varied a little bit based on the month and the season for construction purposes, but we were very lucky to hear back in July that we were accepted. And I'll get into a little bit how I think helped us get accepted later in the video. So then in August, that's when we went to the design center, and this was a 3-hour appointment where you go through everything and pick the flooring you want, the types of cabinets, hardware. Really so many options are decided there. Of course, they're actually decided probably ahead of time as well because they send out a 300-page PDF document. So we really spent a lot of time going through all those options. After August, that was kind of the end of our initial phase on the project. When we submitted our application in June and were accepted in July, they had told us to expect it to be done in 10 to 12 months. And so an estimated closing date was June 15th. So it ended up being done early, so we'll get to that. Basically, in November, they ended up pouring the foundation and doing that basement stuff. And then later in the spring, I guess a little bit late winter, February was pretty mild weather around here, at least the second half of it. So they started working on the frame and other components in February. We had our frame base of the house meeting in March, and then they were continuing to work on it a lot throughout March, April, and May. We had our final meeting in May, and then we closed in May as well, about 3 weeks ahead of the estimated date. And we then basically waited another 3 weeks after we closed, where we were working on projects in the house or moving some stuff in. And then we had our official moving in day on June 7th. So basically almost a year after we just first had our meeting. Where this ended up being was pretty conveniently located to our apartment complex, only about 20 minutes. So we definitely drove by a fair amount, a couple times a month to kind of see the progress. So that was really exciting as things were happening. Now let's get into some pros and cons about new home construction. And if you are someone who's interested in it, this maybe can help inform your decision if this is something to move forward with. So as far as some of the pros that helped us when we were deciding if we wanted to go this way, we loved that you're able to design the home exactly as you want it from the start. I know when we bought our condo, it was an exhausting month full of all these projects. Even though we loved the place and chose to buy it and make an offer on it, there was still a lot to change. You kind of realize as you're in it how much you want to change. And so it was so nice to not have to worry about that here in general. Anything we did was more of like an optional upgrade that wasn't necessary, but definitely being able to fully customize things means that you're going to have hopefully exactly what you want. We felt like the designs here had wonderful layouts and very modern layouts that just made sense. I know that was actually the biggest surprise for me on the first meeting, realizing how innovative the layout was and how it really did perfectly align with what our goals were for our future. So that really was helpful. Not all past layouts are as intuitive, so this was an awesome upgrade. Another big pro of going the new construction route is that you're going to have a lot more time to analyze what you want and reflect. I think in competitive markets, it can be quite stressful. You might be living your life and then all of a sudden a new home is listed that day, and you kind of need to get out there pretty quick to go see it, and you have to decide sometimes within a half hour or just a couple hours if you're going to make an offer on that house. In doing so, you're not really given the full time to analyze maybe everything you'd like. I am an overthinker, so I'm sure not everyone's like this, but there's a lot to consider, especially if you're looking for a forever home and you don't want to rush into that. But in a competitive market, you might feel like you have to. Fortunately for us, though it was a little competitive, it was a situation where we had several weeks to think about it before the end of the month when they take the next batch of applicants. Another pro is that you might have more time to prepare your finances. In our case, if you got accepted, there was a $60,000 deposit, and then the rest of the down payment was due at closing. And so what was nice about that, especially as we work for ourselves and fortunately have seen year-over-year increases in the business, it was nice because we knew what the number was going to be and continued saving more and more throughout the year. So it wasn't like, oh, we're closing on it like a month and a half or 2 months from now. So that was a nice thing with the timeline for us. This wasn't a huge deal to us, but a lot of people like new construction homes because no one has lived there before. Also, I did not expect how energy efficient the home would be. I knew that new construction generally was, but I wouldn't have expected that our energy bills and our utility costs would be lower in a home that's 3,200 square feet compared to our apartment that was 1,200 square feet. I wouldn't have expected it to be cheaper. I was hoping it wasn't going to be a lot more, but the systems here are amazing and we're able to be quite comfortable without even having to really run the thermostat for either heating or cooling as much. So that has been awesome. I didn't expect that. Something else I didn't expect was that there has been more of a sense of community and sort of shared experience with other people who have moved in. We're all kind of in a similar boat. We went through a similar process and it's been kind of nice. There's been more sense of community here compared to anywhere else we've lived before. There's like a private Facebook community for everyone who lives here. And it's a great way to connect with other people, and also people are very forthcoming with, recommendations or help if someone encounters a problem of any kind. We also love how we know when everything was built because it was recent. And for future updates, it will be nice to know when everything is from. That was definitely a big struggle. At the condo, for instance, we had no idea when anything was from. How old is the fridge? How old is the dishwasher? How old is the air conditioner? How old is the roof? There was so much we didn't know. And so now it's really nice to say, yes, everything is from 2024, or in the case of the basement, 2023. And lastly, at least with Pulte, I'm not sure if other builders do this, we have up to a 10-year warranty on parts in the home. So that's nice, including plumbing and whatnot. Because we have that warranty, it does give a little extra peace of mind. Now, what are the cons with new construction? It definitely can be more expensive. I'm sure there's a lot of variations with this, and we were definitely in a more expensive area, but you're going to pay more for different add-ons and upgrades through the building process than if you did them yourself or probably hired another local company. Another con for people is that many of the houses look quite similar. This is more of a cookie cutter model. We actually do, down the street, there's a home that almost looks exactly like ours. They chose the same color siding and brickwork. it's just flipped. So their garage is on a different side. And we're not really bothered by that. They don't let homes that are immediately in the vicinity have the same coloring. I know Jake was really disappointed when we weren't able to have blue siding because there's already blue siding on the homes next to us. But there are some similarities in appearances. Now, maybe I'm just very basic and I just think it looks so pretty. I wish I could share more pictures, but when I look out the window, especially on our upper level, and like there's all the lights up for the holidays, it looks like it could be in the opening credits of a cute sitcom. It is so cute. We did have a ton of choices when we were setting this up, but you don't get full flexibility. So if you did want something quite different than what the model home layouts offered, you would probably have to do it yourself later or go privately, like with a custom builder who can design it just as you want. And also, some of the choices were limited. So we had initially said we were going to have them paint, but then when we saw how limited the paints were and that we couldn't upgrade for a more eco-friendly or low VOC option, it was just like the standard paint, we were like, you know what, not worth it, we'll do painting later. So that's why we just kept it. It was the free included plain white walls throughout the home. Another downside that was something we experienced was that there was quite limited communication after our design center meeting in August until basically February or March. So we weren't sure what the pace was. I was nervous that because we weren't hearing anything that our deadline was going to get pushed back. But it turns out they were probably just gathering materials and moving on through the process just without sharing. So I do think I would have liked at least like a monthly email to keep me informed, but again, that could vary a lot based on the project. Another downside is that if you are embarking on this journey, you are going to have to wait a little bit longer to be in your new home than if you just bought a pre-existing home. For us, that was not a concern, and it actually worked out perfectly with the 1-year apartment lease that we signed, but everyone's different. So if you're looking for something faster, this won't be the option. Financially, the process of getting a mortgage loan was a little bit more complicated than when we were already going for a traditional standalone home. Some lenders would not do new home construction, and we did find previous lender we used was a little bit more complicated to work with just because they were requesting a lot more. And we did end up just going with the builder's mortgage, and then they ended up selling that off, as many of the companies do. But that was a little bit more challenging than previously. In our opinion, the last drawback is that the home did come with some unfinished elements that might have been finished if we had bought a home that was already existing. So for instance, all the basements came unfinished, and there were also not like a washer and dryer or fridge. There were some appliances, but we did have to buy those 3. And so for some people, if you want to have a finished basement all ready to go, that would maybe be a deal breaker. So I've talked about the pros and cons that might be more generic, but we'll get into our specific things that we love as well as regrets at this time. So things that we love, this house is just so beautiful. Now, of course, we picked all the things, so hopefully that is the response everyone has. But truly, this home is perfect for us and our future, and we just can't get over how beautiful it is and how amazing it feels to be here. Even though it's been 6 months, we still probably every day, at least once or twice, say to each other, like, I love this house. And it is true. I am so obsessed with it. In past videos, I was never that excited about where we lived, and I never really understood why people put so much effort into decorating and doing that kind of stuff, but I get it now. I get it. I just didn't have a nice place before. I loved that the home was move-in ready and that we didn't have to do any major projects. Really, the only major project that we did epoxy the basement floor, majority of it, and that was really a nice upgrade because then you didn't have that like gritty cement feel, and we figured it's the cleanest it will ever be at the start, so let's just do it. And we have a home gym down there now. That was really the only big thing. And then as we were kind of moving in, we were able to go in phases. So one of our first days, we laid out all the rugs that we had bought for the spaces, let them air out, flatten out, and sort of moved through the process gradually, which was nice. Another thing we love are views of the backyard. Now, right now, it's, all the trees have no leaves on them. It's not the prettiest in theory, but it's just so peaceful back there. And that was another thing we loved about this lot in particular, is that this is forest preserve land back behind us. There's like a little wooden fence area. And we didn't even realize how great that was. It's obviously great that it's protected land and that no one can build there. And also there's a lot of wildlife. So there were some beautiful heron nests up in the tree that were fascinating to watch. We had our binoculars out and every day would see what they were up to. But what's also great is we have a lot of trees to look at, but we don't actually have to take care of any trees or rake any leaves or stuff like that. It's just a lot easier. And then I'm kind of embarrassed for my overthinking self that I didn't realize this when we bought the place, but we are just a 6-minute walk away from a massive trail network also owned by the same forest preserve. There are over 5 miles of trails, walking, biking, hiking. It is gorgeous. And any day that the weather is not like brutally cold or brutally hot, we've been out there. And there's like a really nice, easy 30-minute walk that we do. And then if we want to have a longer walk, there's like an hour and a half loop that we can do. It really is so lovely. That's honestly like one of my favorite parts about the home in the area. And I can't believe I didn't even realize that when we actually signed for the house, but truly amazing. And connecting back to that, also the location, it really is the best of all possible combinations. Like I mentioned, I love that nature area, but it's also so convenient. We are then, just if you go the other way, we are basically 5 to 10 minutes away from any business we could really want to go to. I mean, 5 minutes away, we have 3 full-size grocery stores and just a lot of stuff around, which is nice. 7 minutes away from a vegan restaurant, like that's very lucky. If you go 5 minutes the other direction, there are different highway options that can take us downtown Chicago easier. There's, just very convenient. And one of the biggest factors was being close to my family. And now we are only 7 minutes away from my parents, 15 away from my sister and her husband. So that is a huge perk as well. And we're already seeing each other a lot more than when we lived, 45 minutes or more away. We do have a few regrets or challenges. I think they're more so the challenge end, and maybe this is not helpful, but actually the regrets are more so things that we did not related to the new construction process. I know people sometimes make videos online talking about design center choices they made that they wish they didn't. And truth be told, we don't really have any of those, so that's really cool. I think from a mortgage perspective, when we signed for this home, I didn't understand fully like how discount points worked for a mortgage. I learned a lot in our refinance process, which happened in November. We refinanced because the rates had gone down and we had paid quite a bit of extra principal. I didn't really inquire too much in our initial phases. The mortgage officer was like, hey, we can get your rate down at this point to 6.6%, 6.625% interest, compared to at that point it might have been 7% or something like that. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. And I didn't really analyze or understand all the details of that like extra $2,000 or $2,500 we had to pay for closing costs to get that deduction. I think I was just relieved to see a lower number. But after doing a lot more calculations and really analyzing it better during the refinance process, we should definitely not have paid for those extra discount points. Granted, you never know what the market's going to do, so if we had the mortgage a lot longer, the original mortgage, it may have been worth it, but I mean, it was only 5 months till we refinanced. A big challenge was that new sod for the lawn was very difficult. I think we've done pretty well with acclimating to everything from owning a house inside because, I mean, we owned our condo for 4.5 years. But the yard stuff is new, and the new sod was challenging. Really, I mean, we struggled. They had a whole setup of recommendations for how you set up your sprinklers to water the sod, and it had a pretty strict watering schedule for the first 6 weeks, especially the first 2 to 3 weeks. And so it was a bit draining. I mean, we figured it out, and we just had to buy 3 different types of sprinklers till we could figure it out. For me, that would actually be a factor as why I wouldn't consider new construction in the future, is because the setting up of the lawn was quite challenging. Ultimately, it's worth it now. You don't have to worry about it, but it was hard. And also a challenge, which this is not necessarily new construction specific, but I had set aside funds for a furniture fund and appliance fund and that sort of thing. But I guess I had never experienced like having this much square footage before. So there definitely was a lot of desire to continue optimizing spaces, but we had to wait and be patient because there wasn't as much furniture fund saved up for those. So at this point, now that it's been 6 months, we've adjusted and dealt with most of the spaces. There's still, of course, things we want to do, but I regret that we didn't have as much saved up on that front ahead of time, because certain things would have been nicer to do like straight away, but then we ended up having to wait, several months later. We're very happy though that we don't really have other regrets. If it's helpful, and if you're considering this for yourself, the building team, when we were doing our walkthrough, talked about how we had upgraded for all the commonly regretted things. So some people regretted not adding a utility sink. Other people regretted not setting up plumbing hookups in the basement, which we did as well. Other people regretted not having enough lighting installed, and we had extra lighting in every room. So we had already done some of the top regrets that people had, so that fortunately wasn't a concern. We just figured, let's go all out so we don't have to worry about these things later. And it worked out well for us. I want to end the video talking about some tips and sort of little secrets that we learned along the way of how it's set up. Maybe this is new to you, maybe it was just new to us, but maybe it can help. So the first thing that we saw firsthand as we went through the process, and because I love looking at, the website and seeing how the homes were being booked and whatnot, basically in this situation, the home base prices started out the cheapest when the community was first started, and especially towards the end as home lots were filling up, the price was greatly increasing for the home. Basic supply and demand, if you were set on that location, maybe it is worth it to pay that higher price, but basically in the year after we signed our initial paperwork and as it was finishing up, it's all sold out now, but the cost went up about $50,000. And that was not because you got like a better home or a bigger home or anything. It's just that they raised the price as the months went on. So basically they would raise the price like $1,000 to $3,000 a month as it was going through. And then at the end, there was more of a surge. So I say this to just encourage you, if you are dead set on an area and that specific location does matter to you, it's probably going to be worth it. But if you are someone who's just weighing all your options and don't really care too much where you end up, it could be better to consider another subdivision that is newer in the stages where you're going to have a cheaper price. This next tip kind of worked out for us without us even trying. It was quite a competitive area, as I talked about. And so the person helping us fill out our application and submit our option requests basically talked about that the main ways that you could encourage your application to be selected was to either pay for more upgrades. So for instance, we added this sunroom. That was an upgrade. That was the largest upgrade. Or if you wanted to add on certain things or certain features, even upgrading the finishes used in the home. Basically, the more upgrades you had, the better. I mean, it's a money thing, right? They're going to earn more money from more upgrades. And then you also had the option to add on money to the lot premium. So basically, when you're going for a new construction route, at least in our situation, there's the base price of the home, whichever home design you choose. Then there's also the lot cost. So that's the lot premium in this case I'm referring to. And then the options. So basically, by having more options and also if you did add a little bit of money to the lot premium, that could help. And so for us, there were so many factors that we really wanted it to work out, and the location really could not be topped, especially they had just started opening up these back lots that had no one behind you. So we did end up paying an extra $10,000 on the lot premium just to entice that hopefully we could get it. And then also our upgrade amount was a little bit higher. We ended up spending $120,000 on upgrades. Now, that does sound insane. I am aware of that. But we did feel very good about the choices that we were making. And also, in full transparency, our home did end up being about $90,000 cheaper than our budget that we were looking at when we were looking for the several months before in our area for a pre-existing home. So even though it was a lot of upgrades, we still felt like it was fair for the area. Those helped us, but what we didn't know is that then, so we got accepted, yay, we signed, do all the documents. And then at the design center, there was no consequence for us if we cut some of those options. So again, this wasn't our intention. We weren't trying to, play the system. But for instance, we had previously selected that we would have the custom painting done. And that was before we knew what our paint options were, which were less than what we expected. So that was $5,000 added to our draft. But then after we realized the paint options were limited, we pulled that and then our home price went down $5,000. So we did end up cutting about $13,000 of those upgrades at the design center, and there were no consequences to that. So that was a helpful option as well. I know when I was doing prep for going to the design center and learning more about this process, I did watch a lot of videos online of people who had tips about new construction. And something that was very interesting to me, and maybe I just am not in the norm on this, but I was surprised how many people were offering the tip of just get the cheapest base option so you don't have to pay any upgrades. And then after you close, tear it all out and put in what you really want. And I guess maybe I'm missing the point, but I feel like if you're gonna tear everything out and put stuff in, wouldn't you just buy a pre-existing home that's not as, not as expensive up front maybe? I don't know. I was surprised by that because my whole thing is I really don't like when there's people working in my house, and I don't really like there being major in progress things. This was not a huge deal objectively, but a few years ago when we upgraded the full bath in our condo, one of them, that was a not very pleasant time for me, and I really did not enjoy that. So I feel like, why would I go through that again? If I'm going to pay the money and go through this process, I just want to make it good from the start. So maybe that's just me. Maybe other people, all think differently, but for me, that's something to keep in mind. I feel like if you're going to tear out everything they put in, why go through this process? Save yourself a lot of time. And then lastly, this tip I think helped us so much, at least with going through the Pulte company. They have, I think at one point they had 10 to 15 different home communities that they were building simultaneously around the Chicago suburbs. And so even though we had toured the model homes in this community a lot and really analyzed them, we ended up going on little field trips to check out the model homes they were building in other areas, especially after we had our 300-page design center PDF. We were analyzing and then looking for the different finishes. So for instance, there were, I think, 5 or 6 finished packages for your hardware and faucets and towel bars, all these random little things. And I didn't want to just see the one. I wanted to see all my choices in person and handle them and see what made sense. And so as we were going through the different model homes, I think we went to 6 different ones, we were able to see the examples of everything. So not only did we just go off of the picture in our booklet or before we got to the design center, we had already seen all this stuff and we had made very informed decisions just because you don't want to mess it up and have regrets. So because we could go to all of them, it worked out well. And even better, the person we were working with at the design center, she was just so awesome and helpful, but she also was someone involved in setting those homes up, staging them. So when we said, oh, we loved this specific house at this community, she was like, I did that one, and it was cool to have, we did our research and be able to have those moments. So I've talked so much about this process. Overall, it was incredibly positive for us, but it really just depends. If this is something you're interested in, you have to kind of weigh those factors I talked about earlier in the video to see if it's a good fit. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to get back to some other content soon here on the channel, but I will leave a few videos linked up here. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.